I'm just looking to share this screen. Welcome to those that are coming in. Excuse me as I log in and I share this screen with those on my Facebook page. Here we go. If I can find the link. I mean, we have 3 in a room. Okay. Okay, got it. Almost there. We're not going to be on too long tonight, but we will get a chance to cover some history from my perspective as a young musician. Okay, we got it posted. Well, hi. Once again, the Sam Tolbert Sound of Joy Music Services, and one of those young budding 17-year-old musicians who began his music ministry in April of 1973. Back then, the order of the day in the Kelly Temple Church of God in Christ, located at 10-12 East 130th Street in Manhattan, New York, in the city of Harlem, was spirituals, anthems, and hymns. There was no gospel music, in a sense, prominent back then. So I can speak from one of experience that saw gospel music evolve from spirituals, from anthems, and from your traditional hymns into a church that had no choice, in a sense, to allow gospel in. Imagine "Oh Happy Day" not being received by the ministerial staff of the church. Walter Hawkins' "Oh Happy Day," when that first emerged, we couldn't play it. Any of the songs, what's the other one from that Love Alive album? Trying to remember. Oh, Be Grateful, from that same Love Alive album. Thank You, Lord, from that album, not being allowed to be sung. Now, as a young musician, 17 years old, I was never trained to be a church musician, but I was trained to be a musician, so I could absorb music from any genre and then borrow from that genre of music and apply it to what I was playing. I love to have prompts. I make sure I put them out. In the Church of God in Christ, they pretty much, this book is the African American, you can see that, Heritage Hymnal, which has a goodly supply of black gospel selections that were pieced together from many genres of other music. So when just to look through this book, I see my history in the songs that were prominent. I just want to pull one up that was traditional. You've seen me play many here on this channel already, and I offer my gospel approach to it. But back then, if the music sounded what they called worldly, which is what gospel music has evolved into, then you got frowned upon, or sometimes the music got stopped in the middle of the song being played or sung because it didn't sound like what they were used to. I want to see if I can pull up if they have an old anthem in here. There are many that I remember as a musician. I wasn't the main musician at 17. I was on the piano, which is why you see me feature so much piano playing on my page. I played on a Steinway, I'm going to say it was a 6-foot Steinway grand piano. So I cut my teeth on a real instrument, which is why you see how I love so much piano playing. I want to look for one of those hymns that were a staple. Just looking through the topical index for hymns, not hymns, but anthems. Here we go. Anthems. No, they don't give you a section for anthems. Well, let's go back to one which I know, which was a staple. Guide me, O thy great Jehovah, which is in the key of G, which was the number that the choir marching in on. This was choir number 1 and 2 on first Sunday and second Sunday, which was the time when your senior choir would sing. Guide me, O thy great Jehovah. Now, there are different versions of this song. There we go. We're supposed to change screens here. Different versions of this song, but I learned the version. Welcome Strong G and welcome T Pocket. There were different versions of this song, but the traditional one which they used was a more modern version. Let me see. There's an old version. That's how that went. That's really going back into the anthem style. At this time, this is about 1973 when I started, they were singing, and this was every Sunday, they sung your more hymn-based version of it. This was the opening selection for 2 Sundays out of the month. On the third Sunday, we did have a choir, which was youth-based. So they were titled the YAC, YAC, the Young Adult Choir. So they were allowed to morph from not having to have to sing anthems of spiritual and the gospel. Good evening, Jerome. But the gospel still wasn't allowed. I mean, it was tolerated because we were considered younger people. Again, I was the piano player, so whatever songs were offered to me, those were the ones that we sung. I don't have a listing here. So, but we did try the patience. That's what we did. We did try the patience of the ministerial staff and tried to sneak in from the Walter Hawkins Love Alive album. We couldn't do Oh Happy Day, and we couldn't do Thank You Lord for All You've Done For Me. And I'm trying to think what other number we tried. We actually got stopped. Old AME Church, and they lived and died by the hymn. Well, I'm going to cover that because there is a place for the traditional hymns and spirituals. There is a place for it if you can chord correctly around it and bring it out from a different aspect. What we did do from the Hawkins album was, I heard the voice of Jesus say, I believe it is. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember the key it was. we did get to sneak in a few of the Hawkins as because we were a youth choir, and yes, we had to sing. Um, what was the morning? Oh, the processional for the youth choir youth choir, I'm gonna call it, was again a hymn, which was always every Sunday. You can imagine 52 Sundays out of the year, 12 of those Sundays the youth choir sang, and we had to march in on Marching to Zion. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joy be known. The chord and sing the song the chord and just sing round the chord and a hymn. It was the hymn that was requested be sung whenever the youth choir was singing. So the senior choir had Guide Me, O Thy Great Jehovah. The young adult choir had We're Marching to Zion. Now, again, I'm not the organist, I'm the pianist. So as the organist is playing, I'm putting my my jazz um, flavor to the song. Of course, you can never compete with a piano against an organ, but because I would start the song off, it gave me a chance to squeeze in some jazz connotations. But that was what was requested. And as you know, as a good musician, you don't ever go in and try to override what's expected. My wife is Presbyterian and believes that believes you me, they do not make any exception. Hymns are the order of the day. And as a musician, if your paycheck is tied to what they want to hear, then you learn what they want to hear, and be knowing that you can always visit someplace else in a sense and let your music grow. I sometimes see other musicians on my Facebook pages, and they're complaining that they don't want to be in a church where they can't grow musically. And I tied it to, I says, well, but if your paycheck is tied to hymns, then learn all the hymns. Learn to adapt a way of playing them where you can not change the melody or the words in a sense, but change the flavor of how it sounds. Um, what time we got? 14 minutes. Okay, I'm doing good. We have 9 in the room. Not sure how many are coming in from Facebook. I did post a link there. So again, I'm still in the 70s. We are still attempting to force feed some of the music that was coming out at that time into the COGIC church of where we lived where we lived and worked basically every week. So we began to hear gospel music being through albums. When you guys don't know nothing about albums, you think you know about MP3 and streaming. We had albums back then, and the only way we could learn a song was to get a 33 speed player, and we would take the arm of the needle, and if we don't careful, drop it onto the album to the position where we thought the song was based upon how it was cut. Well, this is going back in time. I still have albums here in my studio. The way it was cut, and we would guess where to place it. Welcome, Mario. We would guess where to place it so that we can keep hearing the song back and forth. And of course, if we scratched it, then we hear it popping and jumping, and we had to wind up throwing the album out and going out to a store on I want to say it's on 125th Street and Lenox Avenue, called Rainbow Shops, where they sold gospel albums in Harlem, New York, and buy another one and then go back home and try the same thing, just to be able to learn some of the new gospel songs that was coming out. Now, I have to give you my interpretation of gospel. I was not born during Tommy Dorsey's day, where his music was pretty much thrown out of church as I hear it spoken of, where his style, his fully jazz style of songs, was not accepted because it did not fit the spiritual, the anthem, or the hymn family of music that churches want to be involved in. Being a young musician, at my time, back in the 70s, what song is that? Precious Lord was accepted, because now that was considered, it was accepted. I put it like that. They may not have considered it a gospel sound, but because you had so many different artists coming out and people were now singing Precious Lord, Take My Hand, it made it kind of acceptable to be used, but you had to be careful what chords you were using. As a musician, I took license. If I had the opportunity to play behind someone singing Precious Lord as a solo, not knowing the style in which Tommy Dorsey played it, because I didn't have his album to hear from, I would hear other people, other musicians play it, and they would put their own spin on how they heard that song played. So having a background, again, I told you, I've got a background in big band sound. So I would hear the melody and I would just go around with the melody, where the melody was going. I would be jumping around the piano. Then I knew to hold there. Some musicians will stay here. Some will go up. It goes here, but some would go to the minor. I would go I would do that jazz turn. Turn. Now, granted, when you're the musician, you have the leeway to chord a song behind someone singing. They're not going to stop you. You may get looked at or get that side eye. You get that, I can't do it from here, but you get that side eye, like, what are you doing over there in that organ or on that piano? But they never stop you during the service. You might get spoken to by the church mother or one of the deacons here. We don't have that kind of music in here. But if the congregation is feeling it, and I think that's what A.K. Chase, my Facebook page is, look for Samuel Tolbert, Stolbert. There are about 3 of us on there, so find one that looks like me if they post a picture of it. I read Dorsey's story, and you're absolutely correct. He was from a small town in GA called Villa Arante, and he started as a blues singer called GA. Yes, that blues sound, which, you didn't write that down. It wasn't on paper. That was when you sat down and somebody started, or you wrote the song yourself, and you put what your era of music was. era, whatever your era was. If you were a jazz musician, then you put a lot of sevens in the song, a lot of minors, a lot of diminish, which I've been able to apply to hymns, and every now and then to an anthem song. That's that style of blues and jazz sound. But the emergence of gospel fought with the spirit of the ministerial staffs of churches back in my day, starting in the 70s. I'm not sure how those before my time fought it, because I learned their styles from listening to them play, and then I incorporated my style of playing jazz, full jazz tones to whoever I heard play. So when the Hawkins came out, which really was the turning point, they came out with their hit song was "Oh Happy Day." So churches couldn't get with that. Churches could not get with that jumpiness, that, "Oh Happy Day" is a hymn. Let me see if I can remember. The "Oh Happy Day." Oh happy day, oh I don't have the hymn book version in front of me. So you can imagine these senior pastors, elderly pastors who came up with the anthems and the spirituals and the early hymns, hearing a song of theirs transformed into this gospel sound, and the people jumping with it. It was a difficult time. I won't tell you that it wasn't. Again, being a pianist, the organist was always the higher or the loudest instrument, but they liked having the piano sound. They allowed me, I should say, to play the piano. I did what I felt I could have put to the song, whichever could be heard. Never tried to outplay them. We didn't have 100-watt amplifiers on the piano back then, not even a microphone on the piano. You had a piano on one side of the church and the organ on the other side that had two speakers attached to it. So, and depending upon how the musician was playing, I played with them. If they were doing, then that's what I played. I did not try to fight whoever, I accepted the role of the accompaniment musician. But as we began to evolve in some of the music, Andre Crouch came out. And of course, we couldn't do much of his music, because his music was really transitional gospel. It was like we called it black gospel music, but we gave it another term because it went places where even the Hawkins didn't go, until his music every album evolved into something different. Let me pull up, I want to pull up, I'm just going on my page. Songs, gospel songs. Just doing a YouTube search. Not YouTube, but Google. I'm going 1970s. Sorry about that. I got a hotkey changed over. Just looking to see what were the songs of the gospels of the 70s. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Right, Andre Carson and the Disciples. They came out with the, you don't know what you're missing, and Take Me Back, which was a tremendous song. We actually were allowed to sing that one. Again, we didn't have license to sing everybody. Of course, Kirk Franklin's Amazing Grace. What did we do from there? Because you had to have a musician that could accomplish those songs. Of course, James Cleveland. He was. What did we do from him? We did some songs we could touch on based upon if it was a lead that could sing the lead part. Then that's the song we did. It's called the Love Alive albums. Wow, there's so many that we didn't do. Shirley Caesar, we didn't do any of her selections. Certainly none of the Blind Boys. Just looking at the songs that were prevalent in that day. I'm going to go to Andre Crouch's Take Me Back album, because I think in there we were allowed to, as the youth choir, the older choir, they kept with the traditional of the hymns and the anthems, which is why I have such a good history in being able to play those songs, because I was the musician for everybody's choir, not just for the youth, but for the senior choir also. All right, so it's not letting me look in and see what songs are there. I want to just be able to look at some of them and see some of the ones I played. All right, see more. All right, oh goodness, yes, God Is, we did do that. We didn't do Be Grateful. Bridge Over Troubled Water, we didn't do that. Jesus on the Main Line, I don't know what version that is, but we didn't do that because it couldn't be too jumpy. We did do Never Alone. Now, of course, we had a lead. I will trust in the Lord. All copies of the Jesus will be a fence over the one that went back in the 70s. You talk about the Jesus Be the Fence by Fred Hammond. We didn't do that back then. Never Alone, we did get to do Never Alone. Yes, we did do Never Alone. Of course, we had a lead, and of course, we had to water down the song so that it didn't sound too jumpy. And of course, when your audience or your congregation is larger, when your choir is singing, the youth choir is singing, there's a lot of leeway that we were given because we drew the biggest congregational size of the crowd on the third Sunday. So we got to do some of these. I'm looking at some of these other songs we did. Of course, Andre Crouch's Take Me Back. To do that one, just looking down the listing of some of these songs from the 70s. So, and really, when you start talking about gospel music and, where it is today compared to how it was back then, it was all emotionally driven. The songs that took you out of the hymns, where the hymns pretty much spoke of, and the spiritual spoke of where you are right now in your relationship with God. The one hymn that I always love to play is Jesus is All the World to Me. So I'm not going to gospelize that one, because that, again, as a youngster, as a young musician, you got to learn not just the music of hymns and spirituals, but the words. And when the words can affect you, and the music is along with that, you're not too much want to change that so much. And I don't want to gospelize it, getting it jumpy or fast, which is what gospel sometimes do. It makes you get all emotional, gets you all happy. You start to jump around, or start clapping up your hands, patting on your feet, and they consider that gospel, anything that's going to rouse up the spirit in you. And trust me, there is a need for that too. There is a need for that too. Some of the songs, I want to be able to cover this. I'm in for the 32 minutes now. I want to get another 32 minutes in so I can cover a lot of it. So we're in the 70s. We've got the emergence of all these gospel artists. Some of these songs are getting accepted in your churches. And now I want to move to the 80s. Well, no, I should probably stay in the 70s a little bit, because the 70s made the 80s possible with the emergence of all of these new sounding gospel songs and artists, where you begin to now have people that were not afraid to express themselves in a new format of music. The 80s became the year of the big choir, where you had the soloists with the huge choir behind them, which helped choirs grow in your churches, because everyone wanted to be a part of the choir. Why? Because they're singing the popular songs now. Now it's not just everybody holding a hymnal, but you're now teaching the choirs to sing. You're giving them the words, and the lead part is leading the choir into songs. I want to look for some of those songs which were the prominent ones back then. Looking at the list here, because okay, we didn't do them all. Oh, no, that was a Cleveland song, Peace Be Still, but Vanessa Bell tore it apart back in the 80s. I'll cover this one because he had just passed, Douglas Miller. We learned songs from his album, the late Douglas Miller, who just passed. And not too many people could sing. My soul is anchored in the Lord, I believe. I do have a version of it that I play, which is to match the actual album, because that's what I do. But we did do the song Unspeakable Joy from this album. Of course, it was jumpy. It was one that we get someone to lead the part, and it was jumpy. Let me see. I gotta remember how it goes now. I know how part of it. Trying to think of. I'm hearing so many different parts of the song. I want to get the beginning. Come on, Sam, you know this one. I know the tag, the vampire. Oh, I'm lyric driven, and I'm trying to remember how the lyrics went. That takes me to the beginning of the song. See, now I got to go find it on YouTube. Give me a second, because I know this song. Come on, come on, come on. Computer's a little slow. It knows I'm going to replace it. Wow, this is too slow. Oh, here we go. Just want to give you an idea of from my standpoint, gospel music changing from hymns, spirituals, into this new up-tempo version that took a while to be accepted in the church, at least in the church where I was. Here we go, Douglas Miller. I just need to hear the first part of it, and then it'll come right to me. It may pop in on you. Let me turn it right down while I get through the ad. Because I used to do this as a piano player. Just getting to it now. Here we go. Oh. There we go. Okay, I had to hear it. I had to hear it. It's been so long since I've done that song. Now, once I began to hear it, wow. Oh boy, back to the 80s. I haven't been to that song since then. But yes, that was as the gospel music became prevalent, it was where it was being accepted. And again, I can't speak for the Baptist church. I can only speak for the Church of God in Christ where I was. It was a grind getting it in there, but when you did, the leadership kind of just tolerated, because young people can be young people. They had to be young people, so they allowed us to be young people. But we still had to find those songs that were that did not jump. Sometimes you do all this jumping, and by the time you get ready to hit a word being preached, everybody's tired. So we saved the jumping song for the offertory. So when it came before the speaker, we had to find a song that was mellow enough to where, you won't get your coattail pulled by the minister, and that you kept it pretty much about at 3.5 minutes to 4 minutes of the song. So it would be a lead, chorus twice, and then end the song. But for those who remember, My Soul is Anchored in the Lord, we didn't have anyone to sing that, but because I did learn the song, if someone came to the church and they were going to do a solo, usually a male, they would look over and they say at the musician, usually me, because I was the pianist, they said, do you know My Soul is Anchored in the Lord? And I go, yes. And they go, signature. learned this song as close to the album as I possibly could because I wanted to be able to give, as a musician, you always want to give credit to the songwriter by playing his song as close to how the album sounds, so that they don't, your word don't get back that someone heard you messing up a popular song. But that was the era then. We'll be 42 minutes. I'm always going to take an hour, so I'm going to speed ahead. We've got the 80s where the big choirs now started coming out. Chicago Mass, New Jersey Mass Choir. I'm in New Jersey now. Timothy Wright, I would say, began to emerge as a choir. Here from the local New York area, you can't leave out Reverend Timothy Wright. And what did he call this choir? Oh, what did he call this choir? I should know this because I got the albums here. Somebody will drop it off to me, but I don't go look up another time. But the Timothy Wright sound, where he would take a hymn and flip it. If he was, and I guess I can talk from there because I had the opportunity as a young musician, now in my early 20s, or late 20s, maybe by the 80s, yeah, late 20s, of working with the Reverend Timothy Wright as he was the jurisdictional minister of music. So when they would have rehearsals, I would be able to sit in his rehearsals and hear how he taught his songs. So I learned them exactly the way he played them. I actually accompanied him to, back in the 80s, I accompanied him to, I want to say it was Houston, Texas, 1986, where he taught What a Friend We Have in Jesus, All My Griefs and Sins to Bear, Everything to God in Prayer. That was the title he used it. But he took the song, he took the hymn, which was kind of what was being done with a lot of hymns. If you didn't have the lyrics, you go to a hymn and you flip that song. I got to be immersed, goodness, in a lot of music as it was changing. Let me see, I saw some comments here. Florida Mass Choir. Yes, Florida Mass Choir. Do I remember Come Let Us Reason Together by Florida? If I had to learn the song, Strong G, then I would know the song. Again, because albums were popping out all over the place. You had LA Mass Choir, you had Chicago Mass Choir, which is where we learned a lot of our music because our director of music, our music minister of music at that time was from Chicago. So she was leaning towards the music coming out of Chicago. So anything from Milton Bingham, from Clay Evans, there was another person in Chicago. We learned their music first because she's from Chicago. She would push that. But every now and then she would go to Georgia Mass Choir and get something from there. Wherever there was a mass choir that had an album that would come out, you would hear, if you heard it on the radio, that's when she knew to go to Rainbow Record and get the album. She would make at that time, cassette tape for me. Let me see, I always like show and tell because I still have those tapes. I don't know why I haven't gotten rid of them. Goodness. This was my thing I had to do. I would get a cassette tape and I would have 4 or 5 different albums on it. I never knew who the writers were. I just knew who the songs were. And back in the old cassette days, I'd have a cassette player and I'd go home and I put the cassette player on because now we graduated from albums in the 80s. And I would have to learn the song. This is, wow, Richard Smallwood, 1982. I remember learning those songs. Goodness, that's when he came out. That's what I was saying. The 80s gospel music flipped. It no longer was it, how can I put it? The smooth jazz sound of the Hawkins. In the 80s, that's when gospel music began to flip. You had Thomas Whitfield, you had Richard Smallwood, you had Keith Pringle, you had Hezekiah Walker emerging, you had, let me see, what that, trying to think, who were the other songs I had to learn? So many songs were coming out, and everybody had their own identity. And I think that's kind of let's see who came in. That's kind of what's missing in today's gospel music, that every song is sounding kind of the same. You know, 4 chords and a lead and a group behind them, almost like an R&B group. Forgive me for making that analogy. But back then, every artist had their own identity. If you were learning Richard Smallwood, you were learning, let's see, from his earlier albums, what was that song he did? Why won't we change over here? There we go. We learned, so yes, I learned the song, that's Holy, from the early Richard Smallwood. This is the tape from 1982. I don't want to keep, I guess because I like history. It's from that I had to learn the songs, probably the whole album on here, I would think. But you can't, of course, leave him out. Thomas Whitfield, of course, with his style of music, where he brought you straight gospel jazz. So, and I mean, gospel, we give it an actual name, gospel, because we want to say this is the music that God is used by musicians to express God's word in song. But music has always been music. We attached the gospel to it because it began to be played inside of a church. If it was being played in a club, we'd be calling it R&B. If it were played at in a classical hall, we considered it a classical music based upon the person that wrote it and the style in which it is. I, as a person who was trained to be a musician, I was not trained to be a church musician, but I was trained to be a musician who learned various styles. I learned Latin music, I learned big band music, I learned pop music as a young instrumentalist, so I associated music with being music. I didn't give it tie a name to it. It can only be this kind of music if it sounds like this. When Kirk Franklin came on the scene, late 80s, going into the 90s, he again rewrote music. got those changes. I haven't played that song in so long. And again, I can't leave out, of course, Hezekiah Walker here in the New York area, where he brought that urban gospel sound, which that New York sound. And of course, down in the South, as I say, we had here in the North, we had Timothy Wright. Down in the South, you had the great, the infamous, the trendsetter, John P. Key, who's often I would think that he would be competing against whatever New York sound had. He came out with a North Carolina sound, and you had competing sounds. So, as a young musician, learning all these different genres of gospel music, which one do you gravitate to? In my case, whatever was put before me in a cassette tape, that was the song I had to gravitate to. So if it was a Timothy Wright song, I learned it like he played it. If it was a John P. Key song, I learned it just like I was there. What's that one I like? No. So yes, as a musician, you talk about fun times when they would allow the choirs now to try and keep pace with who had the latest song that was out. And again, I learned it exactly the way the album sung it. Even if the choir couldn't match the choirs on those albums back then, I made sure the music at least held up its part. As you see, I can play parts of a song, so if there's a voice missing, I'll match it from either the keyboard or the organ. I'm trying to think of the Hezekiah Walker songs. There were so many of them back in that day. I'm looking at A flat. The Lord will make a way sometime for you. Wow. Just going over it and actually fumbling through it, I'm beginning to remember the correct chords as I'm playing, which is what they call muscle memory. 80s, 90s, of course, you had the real contemporary groups coming out, and I'm not going to cover too much because I'm getting close up on my hour. But as a musician, and I keep saying this, as a musician, not a church musician, but a musician, confronted with learning several styles, I didn't forget that I can play an anthem. Let me see. Lift up your head, all ye gates. Let me see. Was it? Lift up. So yes, I still remember my anthems. I remember, of course, spirituals. what's the spiritual I can use? I still kept within the context of spirituals, hymns, anthems, and the emerging gospel sound that really changed thanks to the Hawkins and the Crouches and the Pringles, Keith Pringle, I shouldn't say Pringle, Keith Pringle, and Shirley Caesar, James Cleveland, who was holding it down from the early gospel choir standpoint. Everybody did Peace Be Still, and everybody did God Is. There it is. Muscle memory. Muscle memory comes back whenever I'm playing something wrong or I don't hear the correct notes. My muscle memory says, okay, your thumb shouldn't be here, your thumb should be here, your pinky should be here, this key should be there. Yes, King Big Shot, God is. This is the gospel sound that what you're hearing today evolved from. I often say on my website, I have over 600 plus videos on it, where not only am I just detailing instructions for newer musicians, but I'm playing some of those old songs from my past so that there'll be a record of how that song sounded from a piano or an organ standpoint, depending upon what instrument I was using. In the 80s, I believe in the 80s, that's also when we got to, what is that song? Oh, goodness. I cannot leave, and God forgive me for not mentioning this because they are from my denomination, the Clark sisters. Now, there were a lot of other sisters also, the Barrett sisters, the Pace sisters, probably some that I don't know because they weren't brought to me. But the Clark sisters came out with a traditional sound, and then as from, again, the documentaries that are out on them, began to change the sound as the mother's influence on them began to change. I had the opportunity to attend a workshop with Twinkie Clark on the organ, had the opportunity to demonstrate how I would play behind a soloist, and not that it was an embarrassing moment because I played the song correctly, but the critique was I didn't push the soloist in the song. Well, I had 30 seconds to play for someone I had never played for before, and as a musician, I was trained, you don't lead a person through the song, they lead and you accompany. So if the person didn't push the song, I wasn't going to blare music behind them because that's not what I do. When you see how I play, it's not really, and I'm not banging on the keys half the time. I may give expressions as I'm playing, but my approach has always been, if you know the song and you sing it correctly, I have to support you where you're needed in the song. If you come up short on the melody, I'll give you the melody if I know the song so that you can find your place. But never do I push someone to sing hard or to sing harsh. But it was my one interaction with one of the Clark sisters, and probably a tremendous musician herself, in Twinkie Clark. So we we did sing some of the Clark sisters songs. Um, history, history. Gospel music evolved so quickly. You it wasn't hard for me to keep up because I loved it so much. When I got a chance to learn a different style from another artist, I had to learn it like that artist played it. Be it Clark Sisters, be it Thomas Whitfield, be it Richard Smallwood. I had to sound like I was on the album. So if they did this, I had to figure out for myself, because there was, like you guys had me now showing you how to get around music, how to make it sound differently. I didn't have that artist, that personality. I had the album which I could go back to and listen and try to tear it apart, deconstruct it, as I often say, to hear what the piano's doing, what the drum is doing, what the bass is doing. So if I want to do a run, let me see. I tried to incorporate it in all of the playing so I can sound like I was on the album. Just that I just didn't get my name, get my name added to it. But gospel music changed so much, and it was for the good. And again, I'm not debasing where it is right now, because change is necessary. But I always say it's often good to go back, not just look back and reminisce. Oh, we used to sing, or they used to sing that. They call me the OG, and they should. I'm looking at 65 a couple of months, and I'm loving where I am right now because I have history from the changeover of traditional hymns, spirituals, and anthems, and early gospel with James Cleveland and with the Shirley Caesar and the Caravans, and Rosetta Thorpe, I believe, was a member of my home church, as I hear hearsay and talk. But that style of music, I got a chance to be a part of when people would sing solos, and trying to think, what was that prominent solo? Where everybody does his eyes on the sparrow. As I say, gospel music evolved as the musician evolved. If you had a classically trained musician or school-taught musician that read sheet music, they weren't playing gospel. They were playing whatever was on the sheet music in front of them. As I say, I was a musician trained to play an instrument. So I could take a hymnal, I could look at notes that's in the hymnal and interpret what I see here in the hymnal. But if I were a trained musician and the song was in F, but the person says, can you lower the key half a step? I didn't have the argument of, well, I only know it in the key of the sheet music. I don't know it in another key. I didn't have that problem because once I learned the melody, I would purposely learn it in 4 or 5 different keys because you never know if you're singing, if a soprano is going to sing, an alto is going to sing, or a tenor is going to sing that same song, and it may be too high for an alto, they want to lower it. It may be too low for a tenor, they want it higher, but in a different range. So I would learn every song, whatever was presented to me. As I say, this book has a gambit of not just black gospel, we call it the African American Heritage Hymnal, but it has got every genre of music in it that I played my entire career as a church musician. Okay, it is well with my, I'm just looking for a song to pull out. It is well with my soul. People, we sung it as a choir. We sung it as a congregational song, you might say. If there was a morning hymn, that's congregational song as a choir. People have sung It Is Well With My Soul as a solo, depending upon the atmosphere of why it was being sung. As a musician, you couldn't lock yourself into what it sounds like in the hymnal. So, and I'm now, I'll just putting it down. I'll use the approach as a musician that plays by ear, which means I have to hear where the song is going so that I can interpret where you want to go. It's in this book, it's in the key of D flat. Key of D flat is too high for an alto. Tenor might be able to do it because now you're in a lower note. So if an alto says, well, I want to sing It As Well, I have to, what I do is I always listen to how they speak, or then I kind of gauge, okay, I know where the highest note is. That would be the highest note. If I knew it was an alto, I'd drop it down to A flat. Knowing where the highest note. That's the highest note for an alto. If they were a good alto, I'd take it to A flat, to B flat. Those are the jazz runs. No. F. I have to remember what key I was in with my chord changes. But that's that original gospel feel where you could take a song and not just play these stock chords, the basic major minor chord, but you throw 6, 7s, diminished, and minor 6 chords in there, which made the song feel like the person is, rewriting the song at the time that they're singing it, or the person playing is playing from what they feel at that time. Of course, when you're playing for a choir, you're doing the verse, you're doing the soloist part, or the leads part, I should say. Then you're doing the verse, then you're doing the chorus, and then you're doing the vamp, and you're being conducted by the choir director. So you kind of couldn't do but so much unless the song allowed you to do it. I was talking about the early gospel in the 80s. You had I think one of your more prominent choirs coming from Chicago Mass Choir, where they came out with Lord, I'm Available to You. I learned all of it. I learned the approach that they used in the album, and I tried to keep it as close to the album as possible because that's how any person is going to recognize the song when it's being played. And then if I got a chance to play it around the second time, I may add here or there some other nuances to the song just to bring it out. Well, I've done an hour and 14 minutes, and I probably haven't even touched the surface of how gospel music has changed from my era of music. Now, of course, as the instruments began to change, I became an organ player, not just piano, but on the organ. So I had to use a whole different approach when I played the organ for some of these songs. But the same concept. I played parts. I played the intricate movement. Now that I had my feet able to play bass, I could free my left hand to do more chording to help bring out a song. Still kept that big band sound. That's something that I don't think I'm ever going to lose. It's always going to be a part of what I do. I just know when to use, how much I want to use, and when to pull back on it, still staying within the context of the song. But I'm going to bring this to a close. I just wanted to give you my evolution in how, being that this is, we call this Black History Month or African American History Month, I have a history in the changeover from the traditional gospel sound of a church and morphing of that sound or the acceptance of that sound by church leadership. Again, your congregation wanted to jump. They wanted to feel happy. They wanted to say that didn't the choir sing that Sunday, and forgetting what the preacher preached, but they were happy during the actual service. But I felt that for my part as a musician, I had to learn it with all diligence. Yes, I had lost a lot of sleep playing these. Lost a lot of sleep, putting these cassettes, putting on earphones. At that time, they came out with earphones, trying to learn the music, then getting to a piano. If I didn't have one in my house at that time, so the only time I could practice was when I got to church. So you can imagine not having a piano in the house, but having to learn songs, not just the hymns or the anthems or the spirituals, but this new emergence of the gospel sound that was becoming prevalent in the church. Now I understand the new sound of gospel has one chord, two chords, three chords, four chords. And go back to the six, to the five, to the one, to the four. When I'm doing this, I'm struggling because I'm used to having intricate movement, lead-in chords, phrasing that helps to take you to the next part of the song. but I'm not going to argue with it, because when I research these songs and I see 53 million, 100 million, 200 million views for 3 or 4 chord songs, where did I miss the boat? That's how I look at it. I missed the boat somewhere. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to jump on a boat at the last minute, but I'm saying that if I have to hear it and it's popular, I'll at least give it a space in my musical heritage to say, if I could play this song for someone, I want to play it exactly the way I heard it played on the album, which is what I do when I do listen to those songs. But for those of us who are gospel music enthusiasts, forgive me if I left off your favorite artists. I just may not know of them, because, as I say, when I was given a cassette tape, your artist may have been on there. I just did not know it, because I wasn't given an album where I can look at the cover and look at who the credits go to, who wrote the song, who played on the song. I just got a tape, and I would have, sometimes I get 3 or 4 tapes. I get a tape from the mass choir, a tape from the women's choir, a tape from the male choir, a tape from the children's choir, a tape from the, who else was there? I was doing teenage choir. So I had to learn 6 choir versions of songs, everybody separate from each other. So I had to learn it all. But because the inert musician in me said, accept the challenge, sound like the recording, and then do your best when you've got to play. And that's what I've done. I don't have my list. It's right here. I always like to do show and tell. I'll keep all this stuff near me. During my history, I wrote songs too. You can see this is a listing. I won't show you some of these songs where I wrote them. Let me see, I thought I put the dates on. Well, it's 1995 that's on here, but I took hymns, I rearranged them, I created songs that I would dream about, and I would create the song and put it to sheet music with electronics. This is in the 90s. So I didn't just learn how to play somebody else's song, but I learned how to approach my own writing of a song so that I can make it sound like whatever Sam felt, the third person, however I felt the song should sound like. And fortunately, I was fortunate to have one of those songs sung by the Times Square Church Choir. It was a Christmas song. I rewrote "Hark the Herald Angels Sing" and combined it with "Joy to the World." Again, part of that musicianship in me that says, I learned from the best. Now let me apply that to if I were going to create a song or rearrange a song or write a song. So gospel music should not ever fade away. Whatever form it's taking right now, embrace it, share it, which is what I'm doing. Don't forget the history of how it came. Again, I'm probably the last of who should be talking about the history of gospel music. So that's why I'm giving it from my standpoint. I did not learn every song out there, but whatever was presented to me, that's the one I learned. So I thank you for spending this time with me. As I say, in this format now, as I approach 65 and I'm a retired church musician, but I haven't retired from learning music or from playing music or the love of it. So you will always see that. You'll always get from me my best or whatever that I'm presenting. If it doesn't sound right, I'll redo it again until it does. Excuse me, I should be always talking. I should have done that before I started. But thank you all that have come in. I see we have 16 viewers now. This will stay up on my page, of course. And if you have any questions about any of the music that I covered or some that you said, hey, did you think about this one? Certainly just leave me a comment. I'll see it and I will answer you to the best of my ability. Just want to answer some of the comments. I truly hope hymns never fade into time. Like anything else, if someone doesn't sing it, it will fade. As you can see on my site, I'll play the hymns, I'll play the anthems. I've just recently put up several spiritual songs, my interpretation of them, but you'll always hear the melody of the true sense of that song because that's how I approached it in my time. You'll see some of the chords may change from that was written in the original writing Again, that's because the original musicians of that day, if there were any, used the structure of chords they had. Sometimes I listen to it and I go, if I had a seventh there instead of a flat six, it'll sound a lot better. Then I'll say, we'll put the flat six, but we'll get that seventh in there the next time around. That's what you will hear me do in my music. You'll hear it straight, and then the next time around, you'll hear me add a little bit to it, like any good chef who wants to make something taste better than the original. That's what I do with my music. I'm not going to leave too many comments out. Michael, thanks for coming. In fact, me acknowledge those who came: T, Pocket, Strong G, Jerome, Mario, A.K. Chase, Kingdom Minded Ministries. Just want to acknowledge those that came in and participated and spent some time with me. Night Big Shot, Warren Roberts, T-Mass, 1026, Michael Borke, I believe, Love Music 61. Thank you for participating with me, sharing this time with me. As I say, this will stay up, and who knows, once I view it and see how badly I did, I may just come back and redo it and have a little bit more. I did at one time do a history of black music presentation back in the 90s. It may still be on this computer. I have to go searching for it. I did an actual write-up. I was asked to do it for a Black History Month presentation. I brought in a singer, and it was more formally put together. I may see if it's still on this computer. It should. And maybe go back and read from that presentation so I can cover more of the people who were in charge. I left out Margaret Thoreau, that it? Who wrote "Give Me a Clean Heart." You can't. So many songs. I'm trying to think of Charles Nix. I've left out. These are Albert Tinsley, who wrote a lot of the gospel songs that are in the United Methodist hymnal. "The Storm is Passing Over." You find that on my site. I'm just thinking of some of these names that now I think the real strong gospel songs. There's so many of them. Man, I would encourage you to do a search here on YouTube or on Google for the traditional gospel songs, so that you can get a audio picture in your mind of where music was to where it is now. And if I don't stop, I won't stop. So again, thank you all for coming in. I certainly do appreciate it. And I will probably do this again, maybe in a different format. Maybe I'll just go do I'll pick an artist and I can cover their own, what do they call it, discology from when they started to where they are now in their music. At any rate, thanks for coming in to Sam Tolbert Sound of Joy Music Services. Love you all. Please mask up, stay safe, and I want to see you again. Take care. Be blessed, everyone.